unlock the secrets of the past with whispers from the grave. Are you ready to hear the chilling stories that time forgot? Join us as we dive into eerie tales and haunting legends, where voices from the beyond share their captivating truths. Discover the mysteries that linger in the shadows and the lessons that echo through history. Brace yourself for a spine-tingling adventure that reveals why some stories refuse to stay buried. Tune in and let the whispers begin. It was a moonless night when we decided to explore the old graveyard at the edge of the jungle. The air was thick and heavy, charged with a strange energy that sent shivers down my spine. "Are you sure about this?" her voice trembling as she clutched her flashlight. "Come on." "It's just a bunch of old graves," Emma replied, her excitement palpable. "Besides, it's supposed to be haunted." Ryan rolled his eyes. "Haunted? More like a bunch of overgrown plants and broken stones. Let's just get this over with." Jake snickered. "What's the worst that could happen? Ghosts can't hurt you. They just want to borrow your Wi-Fi." As we approached the wrought iron gates, the air grew colder, and the faint sounds of the jungle faded into an eerie silence. The graves loomed like silent sentinels, their moss-covered stones telling tales of those long gone. We stepped inside, the crunch of leaves underfoot echoing in the stillness. The moon peeked through the clouds, casting ghostly shadows that danced across the graves. "This place gives me the creeps," Sophie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Relax, it's just a graveyard," Emma laughed, shining her flashlight on a particularly old tombstone. "Look at this one, -1892. Can you imagine the stories it holds?" Suddenly, Ryan's flashlight flickered, plunging us into darkness. "Great." "Now what?" he grumbled, fumbling to replace the batteries. Before we could respond, a low rumble echoed from the jungle. The ground trembled slightly beneath our feet, and a chill swept through the air. "What was that?" Sophie's voice shook. "Probably just a falling branch," Ryan said, though I could hear the uncertainty in his tone. But as the night deepened, the atmosphere changed. A heavy mist began to creep in, swirling around the gravestones like restless spirits. "Let's take a picture," Emma suggested, eager to capture the moment. We gathered around an old, cracked grave, Jake making goofy faces to lighten the mood. As the camera clicked, I felt a sudden cold breeze pass through me, making my skin crawl. I glanced around, feeling as if someone or something was watching us. "Did you feel that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Feel what?" Ryan said, still fiddling with his flashlight. Suddenly, a bone-chilling laugh echoed from deep within the jungle, cutting through the thick silence. It sent a jolt of fear through us. "Okay, that was creepy," Jake said, his joking demeanor fading. "Let's just get out of here," Sophie urged, her eyes wide with fear. But before we could turn back, the ground shook again, more violently this time. A series of faint whispers floated through the air, unintelligible but unmistakably eerie. "Guys, we need to leave now," I insisted, backing away from the graves, my heart pounding hard. The air felt thick, like something was closing in on us. Emma, always the adventurous one, wouldn't back down. "Let's look around a little more," she urged, her eyes shining with excitement. She stepped closer to another grave, shining her flashlight on the ground. That's when we saw it, bones, scattered and old, half buried in the dirt. They looked pale and fragile, almost glowing in the light. "What the hell?" Ryan gasped, his face going pale. Those look. Real, he stepped back, fear written all over him. Before we could react, whispers filled the air, growing louder and more frantic. They seemed to swirl around us, wrapping us in a blanket of fear. Shadows began to move, darting between the trees, and I felt a heavy weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. "We need to go." Now Sophie shouted, her voice trembling with panic. She glanced around, eyes wide with fear. But as we turned to run, the mist thickened, wrapping around us like a shroud. I felt something cold brush against my arm, and I froze, heart racing. In the swirling darkness, shapes began to appear, faint faces emerging, mouths open in silent screams, eyes hollow and empty. They reached out to us, their ghostly fingers stretching as if begging for help. The air filled with their whispers, echoing in my head, drowning out my thoughts. "Don't leave us," they seemed to say, their voices blending into a haunting melody that sent chills down my spine. Panic surged through me, pushing me to run, but I felt frozen in place, unable to move. I turned back to my friends, desperate to break the fear that held us. "Run," I shouted, breaking free from the spell, but the words felt weak against the darkness closing in. The shadows twisted around us, hungry and relentless, as if they wanted to pull us into their world of nightmares. "Run," Emma shouted, pulling me along as we sprinted through the graveyard, our hearts pounding. Shadows clawed at our backs, desperate to pull us into the darkness. The whispers grew louder, turning into wails that echoed through the night. "Stay with us," they cried, a chorus of voices that sent chills down my spine. Jake stumbled and fell to the ground. "I can't," he gasped, fear in his eyes. "Get up," I yelled, grabbing his arm and dragging him to his feet. The air felt electric, charged with something dark and threatening. We burst through the gates, but it felt like the jungle was closing in on us. The branches reached out like fingers, scratching our skin and trying to pull us back into the shadows. The laughter returned, twisted and mocking. "Why won't you stay?" it taunted, sending a wave of terror through us. "Don't look back," Emma shouted, and I forced myself to keep running. But the ground felt alive, as if it wanted to swallow us whole. The jungle throbbed with dark energy, every rustle a reminder of what we were escaping. "Keep going," Sophie yelled, her face pale with fear. The shadows flickered around us, creating a maze of darkness. The whispers changed into frantic cries, begging us to return. "Don't abandon us," they called, their voices chilling me to the bone. I could almost feel their cold hands reaching for me, pulling me into their world. The fear made me run faster. As we moved deeper into the jungle, the laughter twisted into angry screams. "You think you can escape?" it mocked, each word chilling me to my core. I felt like prey, the shadows closing in behind us. "Run," I screamed, my voice barely heard over the noise. My legs burned, but I couldn't stop. We had to escape this nightmare. Suddenly, the ground shifted, roots wrapping around our ankles like snakes trying to pull us down. "No, get off," I shouted, panic rising in me as I struggled against the grip. The jungle felt alive, each sound sending fresh fear through us. "Help me," Jake cried, fighting against the vines that held him. I reached for him, heart racing, but the shadows thickened, swirling around us. "Leave him," Emma yelled. "We can't help him if we get caught too." Every part of me screamed that we couldn't leave him behind. The whispers grew louder, becoming a deafening roar. "Join us." Forever, they cried, echoing in my mind. In that moment, I felt a surge of determination. "No," I shouted, fighting against the darkness. With one last desperate pull, I yanked Jake free, and we stumbled forward, breaking away from the graveyard's grip. As we ran deeper into the jungle, the laughter faded, replaced by our heavy breaths, but I knew the shadows were still there, lurking just out of sight, waiting for another chance to claim us. The jungle was alive with secrets, and we weren't safe yet. The night would hold its horrors close, ready to unleash them again at any moment. We finally made it back to the car, panting and shaking. But as we fumbled with the keys, I looked back at the graveyard. The mist swirled around the graves and the shadows danced, beckoning. "What just happened?" Ryan gasped, his face pale. "I don't know," I whispered, trembling. "But we're never coming back here." As Emma started the engine, the jungle erupted with sounds, the wails of the lost mingling with the rustling leaves, a chorus of sorrow that filled the air. As we drove away, the graveyard faded into the distance, but the whispers lingered in my mind. I glanced back one last time, and for a brief moment I swore I saw figures standing among the graves, their hollow eyes watching us leave. "What do we tell people?" Sophie asked, breaking the silence. "The truth," Emma said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her fear. "But who would believe us?" The night felt heavier as we drove into the safety of the city, but the weight of what we experienced would haunt us forever. The jungle loomed behind us, dark and foreboding, its secrets hidden in the shadows. And somewhere within, I could still hear the whispers, calling out from the grave.